Tom walked through the front door of his country home at mid-morning on Wednesday. He hadn't been there since last Sunday. All he wanted to do was pick up some things and leave again. He expected his wife, Peggy, to be off to work. Tom went into the kitchen to make a cup of coffee and noticed the handcuffs and strip of duct tape still lying on the table where he had left them. The kitchen towel was still lying on the floor, where he had thrown it after wiping his face. The video camera was still on the tripod next to the kitchen table. The chair he had broken and knocked over was still on the floor. Instead of coffee, he opened the refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of Diet Coke. "Where the hell have you been?" Peggy asked angrily, entering the kitchen. Tom didn't look at her and didn't answer. He walked past her into the bedroom to gather some clothes, but she grabbed his arm. "I asked you a question," she said angrily. Tom stopped and turned to look at her. The woman he had married 7 years ago. The woman he loved, but now the woman who had devastated him. "Let me go," he said softly. Peg looked at him. There was no expression on his face. Tom's eyes seemed dull and lifeless. She let go of his hand and let him pass. Peg picked up the handcuffs, duct tape, and kitchen towel, then walked over to the trash can and unceremoniously tossed them in there. She walked over to the tripod and unscrewed the mounting bracket, placing the camcorder on the table, then folded the tripod and placed it next to her. Peggy headed for the bedroom. Tom had a large open suitcase on the bed and was packing. "What are you doing, Tom?" "I'm packing," he answered, and continued another business trip. She asked nearingly no. "Then where are you headed?" Tom stopped and looked at her. The expression on his face was still blank. "What does it matter? You're my husband." "I have a right to know." "Peg, you gave up that right last Sunday afternoon." Tom added a few more items and closed the bag. He picked it up and carried it into the living room, set it by the door, and then headed for the study. Peggy followed him. He put some papers from the desk into his briefcase and closed it, then packed the laptop and power cord into the computer bag. Tom walked over to the kitchen table and picked up the video camera. He opened it, finding the SD card still in place. "Is this what you recorded on Sunday?" Peggy smiled. "A souvenir of your payback." "That's very thoughtful, thank you." Tom still remained impassive. "Tom, damn it. Talk to me," she shouted. Tom looked at her, his face flashed. "What have you done to me?" "Why are you leaving?" she asked. "Peg, sit at the table with me." Tom opened his computer bag and placed the laptop on the table, then sat down in front of it. He gestured for Peggy to sit next to him. Once she was seated, he inserted the SD card into the slot. "Let's have a look at this, then we'll have a conversation." Tom started the tape. The video showed a chair, pushed away from the kitchen table on the right, and an empty kitchen table on the left. "Welcome home, baby. Come on into the kitchen. I have a surprise I promised you on the phone." Tom appeared on the stage smiling. Peggy walked up to him dressed in a short, thin robe. Her hair and makeup were immaculate and her feet were barefoot. She held the handcuffs in her hands and smiled. "Sit down in the chair." Tom sat smiling at her. Peggy went behind the chair and squatted down to cuff him. Her robe fell open, hiding nothing underneath. She slid one wrist into the cuff, looped the chain through the back of the chair, then secured the other wrist. Peggy stepped out of the frame, then returned a moment later and covered his mouth with a strip of duct tape. His smile was visible even with the duct tape on. She stood in front of him and dropped her robe to the floor. Tom's eyes widened with delight at the sight before him. "Are you ready for your surprise?" she asked, smiling. Tom nodded. "We're ready here," she called out a moment later. Footsteps were heard approaching them. Tom turned his head at the sound. A man dressed in Tom's robe entered the room. Tom's smile was replaced by an expression of shock on his face. "Honey, you remember Joey from my work, don't you?" Peggy walked over to Joey and untied the belt on the robe, then pulled it off his shoulders and tossed it into Tom's lap. Joey was naked under the robe. Tom stopped the video and looked at Peggy. "Why, you know exactly why." "Peggy, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about." Tom still remained impassive. "Before we got married, I told you I'd do it." Tom was puzzled. "Your words didn't make any sense. What did it all mean before we got married?" I told you that if you ever cheated on me, I would sleep with you in revenge and do it right in front of you. You remember that, don't you? Is that what this is all about? This is your payback, I promised, and I delivered. She said, as if nothing had happened. You think I cheated on you? I know you cheated on me, asshole. Okay, I'll ask Peggy. When did I ever cheat on you? Don't try that shit on me. You know exactly when, where, and with whom. Tom pulled out the SD card and put it in his bag. He closed the laptop and slipped it into his bag. Then zipped it up. He turned to face Peggy. Either tell me what the hell you're talking about, or I'm leaving right now. Tom was upset. Okay, don't act innocent. While you were on this so-called business trip last week, I got a call from Jerry's wife, Jill. She told me that you and Jerry spent the week in bed with a couple of whores. Jill told you that she did. What proof did she give you? Cut the poor victim crap, Tom. You know what you did? So you retaliated by sleeping with me in front of me, based on a phone call from someone I trust. Yeah, I did it based on her word alone. No actual proof. I didn't need any peg. You handcuffed me and slept with a man right in front of me. Humiliated me, all based on what someone told you payback. That's exactly what I did. Tom shook his head, still puzzled. You didn't tell me why you didn't talk to me about it. You decided I was guilty and deserved to be punished, and then you carried it out without any evidence at all. Yes, so now we're even, yeah. Even not that it matters now. But there's a couple things I'd like to say. Go ahead, I'm listening. I was at a conference all last week. Jerry wasn't even there. He was fired from the band 2 months ago for having an affair with the receptionist at the office, and I haven't seen him or heard from him since he left. I was a speaker at a conference. I sat at a table on stage from 7 in the morning to 10 at night. Every day of the conference, the entire week was videotaped. After the sessions, the group met daily until midnight to discuss and plan the next day. I have numerous witnesses regarding my whereabouts. I never left the hotel until I went to the airport after it was over. So you deny it completely? I don't believe you, obviously. I have proof of where I was and what I was doing the whole time. And you really have a phone call from someone who wasn't even there. As proof sounds like a pretty lousy case to me. But I believe her. What we believe doesn't make it a fact. I believed I was married to the most wonderful, loving woman in the world. What I learned on Sunday is that I am married to a flawed, evil woman who thinks so little of me, that she has both physically and emotionally humiliated me, without any actual evidence of any wrongdoing. Peggy didn't respond. I'm leaving now. You'll hear from my attorney in the next few days. I'm not going to divorce you. That's what this was all about. Now we're even... Peggy, I didn't cheat on you. Weren't you listening? I'm not an idiot. Of course I listened. You still think what you did was justified. I do. Then we have nothing more to discuss. Just bloody well call Jill and find out what evidence she had. I'd really like to know, though. Really, it doesn't really matter much right now. Without another word, Tom walked out of the house. He went to his hotel room and burned the video onto 3 DVDs. Tom had already made an appointment with his attorney and went to the place where he had started the divorce proceedings. The reason for filing would be adultery. He gave a copy of the DVD to his attorney. The prenuptial agreement would be valid and supported by the evidence on the DVD. Tom himself handed the documents to Peggy. When they were filed, the attorney made suggestions on financial matters that should be taken care of immediately, and Tom took care of them. As soon as he left the attorney's office, his cell phone was put on silent mode, and when he got to his hotel room, he checked it. The first call from Peggy came in about 5 minutes after he left. Then nothing was heard for about 2 hours. Calls after that came about every 5 minutes or so. He listened to only one voice message. The first one after the 2-hour break. Oh my God, Tom. I finally got through to Jill. She was drunk, please call me. I made a mistake, please call me. Tom deleted all her calls and voicemails without listening. And then deleted her text messages and emails the calls. Texts and emails continued. He reviewed the numbers as the calls came in. Tom also received calls from Peggy's father. Mother and sister he called Sean. Her father back. Hey Sean. It's Tom. I know who the hell it is. You're not the only one who can read. What the hell did you do to my daughter? I didn't do anything to her except not return her calls. Oh, damn it. She's hysterical. What the hell is going on, Sean? If you want to know what happened, you're gonna have to talk to Peggy. I'm talking to you, damn it. He was angry you're wasting your time. Talk to her. Tom remained calm and civil to him. Did you sleep with someone or something? Talk to Peggy? You son of a bitch, I should come over there and kick your ass. Sean, listen to me. If you want to know what happened, you're gonna have to find out from Peggy. I'm not discussing this with you or Mary or anybody else. Talk to Peggy, you asshole. You really cheated on her. Didn't you? Goodbye, Sean. Tom ended the call. Sean called back almost immediately, but Tom ignored him. This was quickly followed by a call from Mary. Her mother, he deleted their voicemails, then went to dinner and returned to his room for the night. Thursday morning, he bought a new cell phone, but kept his old one as well. He went to his office and took an extended vacation. He also gave them his new number, but asked them not to share it. When he got to the far end of town, he rented a small furnished apartment and signed a 6-month lease. Tom went to the grocery store for groceries and household supplies. By the end of the day, he had the house in order. Friday morning, his lawyer called. He met his attorney at the courthouse, signed the papers, and after filing, he was given a copy for Peggy. Her copy did not require a signature, but the attorney told him to be sure there was an impartial witness to what she was served. Tom called Peggy, and they arranged to meet for lunch at a restaurant they frequented. When Peggy arrived, Tom was already waiting for her, at a quiet table at the back of the room. She was dressed and dolled up in a duffel. Peggy looked well as she approached. He stood up. Peggy put her arms around him, and when she tried to kiss him, he only put up his cheek. It wasn't what Peggy had hoped for, and that was obvious from the look on her face. She sat down at the table facing him. Tom, I've made a mistake. I want us to put it behind us and move forward. I agree, it's time to move forward. Tom declined the waiter services. It was Lynn. They had known her for a long time. What can I get you to drink? She asked, smiling. 2 Diet Cokes, Peggy replied. Lynn? Stay a minute, Tom asked. He reached out and took the divorce papers, then handed them to Peggy. Peggy, these are the divorce papers. Lynn is my witness that you have been notified. Thank you, Lynn. Peggy turned pale as she looked at the papers. Lynn went to get their drinks. Tom, you said you wanted to put this behind you and move forward. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm moving forward, but Tom, I made a mistake. That's not what I meant. Peggy, we've been married for over 7 years until Sunday. They were the most wonderful years of my life. I've loved you like I've never loved anyone, and probably never will again. Don't throw that away, Tom. We have a great marriage. It won't be last Sunday. You ruined our marriage and my love. I made a mistake, don't you see that? Let me tell you what I see when I look at you or when I close my eyes. I see the woman I loved. I see him having her on the table in front of me and telling me how much she likes it and how much better a lover he is than I am. That's what I see now, Peggy. Not the woman I cared about. You killed her that day. But Tom, it was all a mistake. No, it was very deliberate. The reason you did it was a mistake, not the act itself. I told you that if you cheated on me, I would have revenge sex in front of you. You knew what would happen, and you even agreed to it. Yeah, I did it knowing it would never come to that. What did I tell you would happen if you cheated on me? Peggy lowered her gaze to the table. You said you divorced me? Did you agree to that? Yes. But I didn't cheat on you. Tom held out a DVD tour. This is for you. It's a copy of your not cheating thing with Joey. Tom, it wasn't cheating. It was revenge. Lynn returned with their drinks and took their lunch orders. Peggy, sex outside of marriage is adultery, and unless both parties agreed to it, it is considered cheating. We can work this out, Tom. We'll see a therapist, no Peg. We can't. You showed me the side of you that destroyed the woman I loved. You killed her as surely as if you'd cut out her heart. But you didn't. Instead, you ripped out my heart. I don't want a divorce. I will fight you. On Sunday, you showed me a different side of you. I have another side too. You don't want to see it. What other side? The side where I become as vicious, indifferent, and evil as you were on Sunday. I will not use a mistake as an excuse. I will take full responsibility for what I do. That's not who you are, and you know it. That's funny. I was thinking the same thing about you. Damn it, Tom. This was a mistake. No, it was a deliberate act of revenge. What did you tell your parents? I told them we had a falling out and that we'd work it out. A fight about what? Peggy looked down at the table and said nothing about what Peggy. I told them you were having an affair. You never told them the truth. No, why not? They wouldn't understand. Understand what? They wouldn't realize it was a mistake. Maybe I'm finally getting it. Tom, I know what I did to you was wrong. I based it more on judgment than fact. I know I hurt you deeply, but we can get past this. We can rebuild our marriage. We can put this behind us. Okay, we'll put this marriage behind us. The woman I love no longer exists. I will fight you every step of the way. I'm saving our marriage. There's nothing to save, it's over. Don't make me reveal my other side. You won't like it. You're bluffing. Don't push it, Peggy. Get a lawyer, ask them to review the petition. Ask them to contact my lawyer if you have any questions. You'll be single and you can have as much Joey as you want in 90 days. This has nothing to do with Joey. I'm sorry, that was rude of me. I apologize, I'm not leaving you, Peg. You already have the settlement as fair. Accept it and move on. No way in hell. Lynn brought them food. Tom handed her his credit card. She walked away and returned a moment later with a check for his signature. Tom signed it, then stood up. He still hadn't touched his food. Enjoy your meal, Peggy. I lost my appetite last Sunday when you spit on me. Tom left and went to his house. On Tuesday, Peggy met with her lawyer for the first time. She was a tough nut to crack who was recommended by a friend. Have a seat, Mrs. Givens, I'm Ronnie Savage. What can I do for you? My husband's trying to divorce me. Has he served you with papers? She asked. Last Friday. May I see the papers? Peggy held out the papers to her. Ronnie looked at the first page. He's citing adultery. Is that true? No, it was a misunderstanding. You had sex with someone other than your husband. Yes, but it was a mistake. Did your husband consent to you having sex with another person? Not specifically with this person, but he agreed to me having sex in retaliation if he cheated on me. So your husband cheated on you and you had revenge sex? Well, yes and no. Mrs. Givens, could you please clarify that for me? I did have revenge sex, but then I found out he wasn't cheating on me. Your husband wasn't cheating, but you still had revenge sex. I did, Mrs. Givens, it's called adultery. But I thought he was cheating. What proof did you have? A friend told me he did it. But apparently your friend was wrong. Yes, finally someone who sees that it was a mistake, Mrs. Givens, based on what you've told me. I'm dating a woman who had revenge sex with her husband. Based on hearsay evidence. Does he have proof that you had sex with another man? Yes, I handcuffed him to a chair and made him watch. Then it's his word against yours. Is there any real evidence? I videotaped the whole thing. Do you have a copy of that video? Peggy held out the DVD that Tom had given her on Friday. Can I watch it? Peggy nodded. Ronnie put the DVD into the player. And after watching only a few minutes, she stopped it. I'll need to watch the whole thing, but I can do that later. Let me familiarize myself with the petition first. She began to read it after a few minutes. After flipping through a few pages, Ronnie looked up. I see that you signed a prenuptial agreement. And at first glance, he seems pretty solid when it comes to adultery. If he changes the wording of the complaint to irreconcilable differences, we can avoid that part. I suspect that will be a difficult task. Even with the prenup, he is offering you considerably more than the law requires. Without a prenup, you will likely be able to get a significantly larger cash payment. I don't want a cash payout, nor do I want a divorce. I want my husband back. You told him that, yeah. He didn't even think about it. Contested divorces can be very expensive for everyone involved. If we get counseling, it can't hurt. Then let's do it. We can seek counseling and let him know that if he refuses, we'll fight for everything, okay? Do you have any dirt on your husband? You mean criminal stuff? Anything he's as spotlessly clean as can be. Has he ever hit you or threatened you? He never even raised his voice to me. I'll sort through the paperwork very carefully. Watch the video and get back to you in a day or two. Does he have a copy of that DVD? Peggy nodded. It was Wednesday when Ronnie called her. Mrs. Givens, he has a pretty solid case. The video you recorded is very damaging, and you don't want any judge to see it. Let's start with what we've been discussing. We're going to offer 6 weeks of family counseling. Whatever it takes, I want my husband back. 2 days later, Tom's lawyer called him and asked him to come in. He went to the office that afternoon. Tom, they've requested 6 weeks of couples counseling. What if I say no? They'll do everything they can to fight us. I'm against it. What do you think? She hired Ronnie Savage. She's one of the best. Better than you, I'm the very best. You ready to fight teeth and nails if I have to? Then let's just say no and see what happens. Keep me posted. That night, Tom called Peggy. Peggy, I've given up counseling. I told you that if you argue with me about it, you'll see another side of me that you won't like. Why are you acting like this? Just stop this crazy divorce and come home. Peg, that's not going to happen. This is your last chance to get off easy. I won't call you anymore. I'm fighting you, Tom. I don't want a divorce. Have it your way. Tom ended the call. The following Monday, Peggy filed a countersuit. The grounds were irreconcilable differences. She asked for everything 2 days later. The local school board and the school where Peggy worked were served with documents, alleging relationship violations between their 2 married teachers, Peggy Givens and Joseph Carr. Attached to the package were graphic photos of the 2 having sex. An emergency closed-door school board meeting was called, and both were fired that same day. That same day, Joey's wife received a DVD in the mail, with the names and phone numbers of those in the video. She called Tom after watching the video. Hi, this is Tom Givens. This is Tammy Carr, Joey's wife. Did you send me that DVD? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, but I thought you had a right to know. When was this made? A week ago. Sunday at my house. Is that you sitting in the chair? Yes, and the video's real totally. It's not edited. Is this woman your wife? For the moment, I filed for divorce. That's all I needed to know. I'm sorry to bother you. Tammy hung up. Tammy's next call was to a divorce attorney. The next day, Joey called Peggy and reprimanded her for exposing him with her act of revenge, and costing him his job and possibly his marriage. Even after losing her job and Joey's call, Peggy didn't give up. When another week passed and no word from his lawyer, Tom took his next step. Peggy's parents and sister received a copy of the DVD in the mail. After a very brief introduction to the video, they began asking Peggy questions and reprimanding her. Tom's old cell phone rang. He answered her sister's call. How could you, Tom? Peggy loves you, Mandy. She has a strange way of showing it. It was revenge sex, for God's sake. So she still hasn't told you the truth. What the hell is the truth, Mandy? I wasn't having an affair. She got a call from a friend who said I did. She took it as truth, and without any proof, this was her revenge. Tom, Peggy is not that stupid. Well, ask her yourself. Let her know that if she lets the divorce go through and stops fighting it, that's the end of it if she keeps going. That's just the beginning. Can't you deal with this? Have you watched the DVD? Just the beginning. That's all I could digest. Observe all of this, and then ask yourself if your husband is willing to try to reconcile. Would you do that? I will. But I still think you should at least try to work it out. Mandy, you've known me since we were kids. You know I'm not a bad guy. Watch the DVD. Okay, I will. Mandy hung up the phone about an hour later. She called back. Oh, Tom. I'm so sorry, I understand now. But I still need to talk to Peggy. Let her know that if she stops fighting the divorce, this will be the end of it. If she fights me, it's only going to get worse. I'll tell her. Mandy went to see Peggy in person, and after getting confirmation that Tom was telling the truth, relayed his warning. Peggy was adamant in her refusal. Mandy then went and told her parents about what Peggy had done, and how Tom insisted that she drop the countersuit. Peggy's parents visited her that night and got copies of both documents. Sean had a family friend who was the attorney who reviewed the documents and the prenup. His recommendation was that Peggy do exactly what Tom said and quietly take the matter to divorce court. Peggy still refused to relent. After another week without a word from his attorney, Tom took the next step. Peggy taught Sunday school at the same church her parents attended. Every member of the women's auxiliary and the ministers of the church received a flyer in the mail that had pictures of Peggy having sex with a man who was not her husband. The caption read, "Should this woman be teaching your children?" On Sunday, Peggy's parents were treated more like lepers than parishioners. After the service, the pastor took them aside for a private conversation and explained why he also gave them a letter for Peggy, informing them that her services would no longer be needed, or even welcomed a copy of the flyer was enclosed. When they gave it to Peggy, she cried but still refused to drop her counterclaim. Peggy told her lawyer what Tom had done. Telling and showing her family was not a crime. This was clearly evident in the DVD, where Peggy told Tom that she made the tape for him. Since it was his property, he could share it with any adult he wanted to. The flyers were sent out anonymously, so without a thorough investigation, they could not be traced back to Tom. Ronnie recommended that she drop her countersuit. Peggy's family begged her to drop it. It was now affecting their lives. Sean called Tom and shared his concerns. Tom repeated his demand to Sean. Still, Peggy insisted. A few days later, Peggy's neighbors and all their friends received similar flyers, signed only with Peggy's name and contact information. Peggy's phone and email exploded with nuisance calls and messages. Trash was dumped on her car, driveway, and lawn. Tom waited another week before posting on her social media accounts. It started with innuendos, then progressed to photos with blackouts, strategically placed in all the right places. A few days later, Peggy received an email from a porn site thanking her for the video. When a news crew showed up at her door, she finally called her lawyer and withdrew the countersuit. She asked for a meeting between her and Tom. Tom agreed on the condition that it be done at his attorney's office. They met a few days later. Peggy looked like a shadow of her former self. She had lost weight and, judging by her appearance, was also sleep-deprived. "Peggy," Tom said, sitting down at the table across from her, "I've dropped the countersuit. You won, no, Peggy. I lost the woman I loved. I lost my marriage. I lost everything that was important to me. There really is a side of you that I've never seen. I'm sorry you had to see it, Tom. I don't know what to say. I can't show my face anywhere. I'd have to leave even to get a job. I can't stay here either. Everyone we've ever known treats me like a leopard, too. We both lost everything, haven't we?" "Yes, Peg, we did." Tom's eyes were on the verge of tears. "I know it's too late now, but is there anything I can do to undo what I've done, besides figuring out how to turn back time?" "Yeah, besides that." "I don't think so, Peggy." Tom stood up, getting ready to leave. Peggy stood up and held out her arms for one last hug. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. Tom took a step toward her, then stopped. Tears ran down his cheeks. "I can't, Peggy. I'd feel like I was cheating on the woman I loved." He stood looking at her for a moment, then turned and headed for the door. When his hand touched the doorknob, he turned to her again. There was one thing that might help. "What, Tom? Just once you could say I'm sorry." Just once Tom walked out of the office and out of her life.